Hello my friends and welcome, my name is Dennis and this is the latest update from Ukraine. So yesterday Ukraine launched the ATACMS strike on the Russian military airfield of Saki, not far away from Yevpatoria, occupied territory of Crimea. The name of the airfield is Davydov and it's the base for the Russian fighter jets. If we zoom in the Google image, you may see some of the fighter jets of the Russian army together with some of the tactical bombers. This Sukhoi 24, which Ukrainian army also by the way has. Also on the other parking stands you may see lots of the tactical bombers too. Well, anyways, this is one of the main Russian bases for the aviation to attack Ukraine from the south. For this reason, it's the absolute legit target for Ukraine. You know, recently Ukraine intensified the strikes on the Russian military infrastructure, especially military airfields. Once in 2 or 3 days we heard information about those strikes. Ukraine uses drones and this time ATACMS. Still Ukraine is out of the permission to use ATACMS on the Russian airfields on the Russian territory, but it is Ukraine. Crimea is Ukraine, but temporarily occupied. Let's watch, by the way, some of the videos from the place. The videos which I obviously shared on my Telegram channel, so there is some sort of the kaboom, the ground kaboom, which was filmed, so something was burning on the ground. So according to the information coming directly from Crimea, the Saki radio station was destroyed, plus 2 of the Russian servicemen were delivered to the hospital with wounds. This night, the Ukrainian armed forces struck the territory of the military airfield in Davydov Saki district with ATACMS. Sources in the emergency services of the annexed region also told that the ammunition depot was hit and fire broke out. The Russian servicemen who were delivered to hospital received shrapnel wounds from that munition. The radio station that was hit by ATACMS is located 5 kilometers away from the airfield. As the result, the station was completely destroyed. In total, according to the sources, Ukraine had launched 4 of the ATACMS missiles. 2 of those were shot down by the Russian defense, but it's hard to prove really. But at least we have some sort of the report, so every day there are kabooms for the Russian side. My friends, if you like my videos which I publish daily on my YouTube channel, you may also consider supporting me on Patreon. The link for my Patreon page is in the video description just below. Thank you for supporting my motivation producing more content. And again, Russia lost their Panzer S-1 air defense system, again with a similar outcome for 2 more of the Russian servicemen who were delivered to the hospital. The Panzer S-1 air defense, well, you may check it out on this picture, it's not restorable. The system was struck during the night time somewhere in the occupied territory of the Kherson region. Also, Ukrainian drones successfully strike the Russian supply vehicles in Donetsk Oblast. For example, it happened over there with the Russian Urals. They continue to use Bukhanka, and this time they used those kind of the rubber panels to reinforce the Bukhanka construction, but as you may see, it doesn't really help. However, the guy in the video says that those kind of the thin rubber panels help to save the vehicle from the complete destruction. I don't think so, honestly. They were just lucky that the drone hit the bottom front part. Again, without FPV drones, it wouldn't be possible for Ukraine to counteract the Russian attacks, which unfortunately Russia performed elsewhere on the front lines. For today, Russia moved again, taking more territories. And for that, let's review the deep state military map source. So Russia advanced in Vovche, occupying this village. And let's go to the timeline. It was yesterday and it is today. So they've decided to attack Zhelane village probably and later on go to the southeast. Kind of the strange move over here, because I thought that they would move to this place, cutting this road for the Ukrainian supplies, but maybe they're oriented to go to Pokrov city, which is located over here. And you see in general this huge Russian attack hub. It goes from Avdiivka actually, and Avdiivka is now a main supply and logistics hub for the Russian army. That's why it was important to keep Avdiivka under control, but there was no chance for Ukraine to withstand it. That's why Russia occupied Avdiivka at first and continue movement. By the time I was sure that Ukraine built some of the defense lines, but actually that information wasn't really correct. The Ukrainian defense in this region appears to be kind of poor. All the trenches are being digged down by the soldiers themselves, and there was no engineering equipment used before, and I told you about the situation in Pokrovsk. Local authorities decided to plant flowers. Yeah, the situation sometimes, well, is just frustrating. Area there is also the risk for Ukrainian army in this place of being encircled. So I'm speaking about this area. So between those two villages, it's just less than 5 kilometers. From what I understand, Ukraine has the robust positions at the border with self-proclaimed republic. Also, analytics from the mainstream media services start to say about the possible encirclement of Ukrainian group. So I'm calling it early this time, that it's time to withdraw Ukrainian army from the place. Rubke is also saying about the possible encirclement of the Ukrainian armed group between New York and Toretsk. Well, you should be blind not to see the possible threats, so it's not just his opinion. You can basically see it on the military map. The risks are out there, but Ukrainian army is not yet being encircled. I hope that it will not be the same as in progress. Then Ukrainian soldiers would have to get out from the place, fighting for their lives, let's say. And also Russia moved in Krasnohorovka, almost fully occupying the settlement, while still some of the streets are under Ukrainian control. From this area, Russia wants to move towards Kurakhove. They already had a couple of the attacks. I spoke about those on my channel the day before yesterday, and yesterday all of them failed. Why? Again, because Ukraine uses FPV drones, but Russia still has more resources compared to Ukraine at this particular time, and they want to hire more soldiers. In his interview to The Guardian, the Ukrainian General Commander Syrsky said that Russia wants to reinforce the military group from 520,000 soldiers to 690,000. And based on those numbers, Russia has no other choice rather than to announce a new massive mobilization. Just for you to understand the dynamic of those numbers, at the very beginning of the war, let's say spring 2022, the Russian army that was used in Ukraine counted something between 150,000 and 175,000 troops. But during the winter of 2023, after Russia announced the mobilization and they start to hire more soldiers, their group counted 475,000 troops. And this summer it's around 530,000. So Russia used every sort of the means to get new army men to the front lines. They even started to pay crazy salaries for the Russian soldiers. Now if some Russian citizen goes to the Russian army from St. Petersburg, he obtains $15,000, from Moscow 20,000. So it's the initiative of the local governments. But even with all of that, Russia increased the number of their forces just by 50,000 soldiers from the last year, mainly because of the meat grinder. And now they want to increase this number from 530,000 to 690, 3 times more than they were able to increase the last year. Plus they have losses, so without mobilization this process is not possible. Russia has no people to compensate from, but the mobilization step is quite unpopular among the Russian society, especially that part of the society which watches the war just on TV. They may support Putin and watch this war, but they don't want to participate in it. And with the heavy losses rising, the Russian society already understands that if they go to the Russian army, there will be no way back alive. Plus the situation with supplies and the attitude of the Russian command, well, it's just crazy. So for this reason, Putin would like to get the ceasefire for some time to prepare his army. By the way, about the situation with the supplies for the Russian army, they are sometimes forced to drink the water from the puddles, as this Russian soldier does. No filtering, nothing, they don't have time and tools for it, so there is a great risk for them to obtain diarrhea, for example, and after it, dehydration. Well, sometimes they use the handmade tools trying to filter the water, but still it's kind of dirty out there. The only way is to boil it, but if they make the fire, it will demask their position. But it seems like I know where all of the Russian supplies went, all of the food and water. They should ask this lady responsible. I'm just joking. I'm also the body positive. Yeah, I have to lose lots of the kilos, indeed. Well, actually, this lady is responsible for the local health care and some sort of the local medic on the front lines or right behind the front lines. The video of the local Russian drone coordination center leaked to the internet, so lots of the Russian officers are monitoring the screens and they have the isolated communication with the general command. The similar stuff we might have spotted in Ukraine. So they monitor the situation live 24/7 of what is happening on the front lines with their soldiers or with the Ukrainian soldiers, just the battlefield. And do you know how they communicate with the soldiers on the ground? You may see it on the screenshot. Yes, it's the Discord service, a very popular platform especially for gamers. So they use internet and mobile devices of the Russian soldiers on the front line. And they even stream the video out there. But according to the latest news coming from Russia, Russian Duma, so the Russian lawmakers, seek to punish troops using smartphones on Ukraine battlefields. Well, potentially Ukraine might use the smartphone signal to identify the position of the particular Russian soldier. But on practice, it's hard to do because the particular electronic warfare is not available everywhere. Yeah, some of the Russian soldiers could be identified, but it happens just occasionally, so mostly they have pluses in using the smartphones. I just show you for communication purposes. In Discord, they see the video, then they are attacking themselves, because they have the stream from their headquarters and they might coordinate their operations very fast. But the Russian lawmakers do afraid that some of the information from the front lines, especially the videos like I've showed to you with the puddle water, with lack of the supplies, would just leak to the internet and, let's say, dishonor the Russian army, which is already dishonored. They want to block the smartphones just to lower the possibility of the new Prigozhins to appear. Because Prigozhin was actually fitted by this anger from the Z community that they don't have shells and they have tremendous losses. The situation haven't changed from that time, but the information is quite limited. But Russia applied more censorship, that's it, they're not fighting with the problem. So actually I do support this decision. It will make the communication for the Russian soldiers terrible, because we see what they use for it. Kind of the good news from the United States of America, from Pentagon, they want to allocate $2 billion United States dollars more for the Ukrainian military support. It happened because of the accounting errors for Ukrainian aid. I guess just some of the military units are not so expensive as they thought initially. As far as I remember, the similar case happened a year ago. The drama with the Russian transit oil blockade continues. Well, this time the Slovakian Prime Minister Fico, the close friend of Orban, called to Ukraine and spoke with the Ukrainian Prime Minister about the blockade. He called to Ukraine to say that the Russian oil is very important for them, indeed. Before Fico said that Slovakia is like a hostage in Ukrainian-Russian war, but definitely Fico himself follows the Russian propaganda only. At the same time, the European Commission says that there is no threat to the supplement of the European Union transit. So the European Commission really doesn't care about this case, so it's like internal conflict now between Ukraine, Hungary and Slovakia. I think that Ukraine decided to push it forward after Orban's trip. Then Orban tried to push Ukraine for some sort of the negotiations. Kadyrov just said that Russia should block YouTube, and definitely this process is imminent. Russia will block it. But the problem for Russia that they do not have the alternate big video hosting platform. They tried to make it before, but unsuccessfully. Well, they have RuTube and Vkontakte, it's like the Facebook, but it's not a competitor for YouTube. So I guess that the Russian bloggers will be just disappointed, and we also have the warning calls from the Russian State Duma that they're definitely going to block it. I think it might happen as close as this autumn. So the Russian officials recommend Russian users to change for the Russian platforms, but again, there are none. Like for example, China did, they have the WeChat application, basically there is everything. Video, online shops, communication platforms, everything absolutely. So Chinese, they do have alternate. Russians, no. Flooding in Russia again because one of the main dams just collapsed in Chelyabinsk region, so water went and it flooded lots of the local villages. Could be kind of the frustrating for many of the Russian citizens. It is happening because of the Russian system. It doesn't work. The former deputy of Shoigu, General Dmitry Bulgakov, was arrested today. He was also responsible for the supplies of the Russian army. He was prosecuted for the money laundering, bribes, and so on. Being arrested for 90 days, his case is now in the court. As you see, Putin continued to clean the Russian army from the corrupt Russian generals, but the new generals coming are basically as same corrupt as the previous ones. There will be no change in the Russian army system without changing of the system itself, and we see it from the videos coming from the Russian soldiers. Then Russia started its mobilization back in 2022. They found out that the uniform for the Russian soldiers is just missing. Not just few jackets or trousers, no. 1.5 million of the uniforms, complete uniforms, were missing from the stores and existed just on the paper. So who was responsible? Well, this guy, and I believe that one day Shoigu will also be prosecuted. And he should keep his windows closed all the time. The case that I just can't understand why Turkey so fast gave to the Russian side the suspect of the assassination attempt of one of the main Russian officials. I told you about the story in my last video, and I thought that it might take months or even years for Turkey to extradite this person to Russia, but they did it very fast, I would say in less than 24 hours maybe. So the guy was arrested in Bodrum and sent back to Russia under the FSB convoy. He said that he was told by Ukrainian intelligence to perform this act. He received all of the tools necessary to do it, and he did it. Well, unsuccessfully, but he did it. So Turkey plays kind of the strange game out here, giving this suspect so fast, because there should be the court at first in that country which this individual in. Like for example, it happens with a Russian Nazi in Finnish court, and Finnish court had decided not to send that individual back to Ukraine because they're afraid that he would be wrongly prosecuted or something, but here Turkey really doesn't care. The Olympic Games in France have been opened with a huge ceremony just in the middle of the Paris city. It was interesting, but some say that it was kind of the strange celebration this time, and I decided to blur this video just in case. I'll not leave my comments over here, just yeah, you probably know the reason. Today just sure about the United States politics. Probably you remember Mike Pompeo. Yes, he is from the previous Trump's team. So he wrote about the possible Trump's peace plan relative to Ukraine in the Wall Street Journal column. So the source is here, the Wall Street Journal, but I don't have the subscription for that website, so fully I cannot show you this article over here. Pompeo said that there is no evidence that Trump, if elected as president, would push Ukraine towards capitulation. But actually we have lots of the evidences from the current Trump's team, and also from the possible Vice President J.D. Vance. He said openly that Ukraine should be out of the financial support, including the military support. No. But instead here we may see the optimism from Mike Pompeo towards Ukraine, that Trump might unleash even more funds for Ukraine, establishing a $500 billion land-lease program, which involves providing military aid to a loan basis rather than as a grant. Well, for Ukraine in the current state, it doesn't mean whether it's a loan or a grant. The main thing is to stay alive. And later on, the future generations after the rebuild of the country will pay back all of that to the United States. It could take hundreds of years, because this sum is really enormous, and what Ukraine landed already is also a huge sum. But now it's important to finish the war and to get rid of the threat. Also, Pompeo says that Trump might remove all of the restrictions on types of weapons Ukraine can receive and use. F-35s, Tomahawk missiles. Well, if that happens in real life, I would be a strong Trump supporter, but something tells me that those figures are far from reality. Implement real sanctions against Russia, including the removal exemptions of Russian banks involved in the energy extraction. Unleash Americans' energy potential, restore ties with Saudi Arabia and Israel, and work together against Iran. These steps would position Mr. Trump to set the terms of deal. The war stops immediately. Ukraine builds up substantial defense forces so Russia never attack again. No one recognizes Russia occupation and claim annexation of any Ukrainian territories, Pompeo said. Additionally, with this peace plan, Crimea would undergo demilitarization. Ukraine would be rebuilt using frozen Russian assets and would join NATO and the European Union as soon as possible. The alliance would also create a $100 billion fund to arm Kyiv, with the United States contributing 20% of total. This plan is as reliable as the Swiss watches. It is more ambitious than the goal of Elon Musk to colonize Mars. And you know, I can feel that there is tiny little part of the fiction in it. Actually, I don't see those signals coming from the Trump's camp, just Pompeo said about it. Well, maybe he is still Trump-affiliated person and he decided to say about it right now because Trump wants to get the support of the Republicans, and not all of the Republicans are against the support of Ukraine. In majority everywhere in Texas, Nevada, Arizona, people support Ukraine. So maybe this article came out to compensate the loss of the possible votes. Because J.D. Vance rhetorics is not good for every Republican. Yeah, kind of the interesting stuff we see from the campaign, but you know, this guy, Mike Pompeo, he's not official any longer, and I don't think that he's now in a Trump team, so he might say wherever he wants. It could be just his imagination, but imagination is good actually. China started to produce those kind of the small drones to deliver people somewhere. Do you think that infantry forces might fly to some of the enemy positions using those kind of the drones? I think it's more safer compared to the ride on the motorcycle. Well, in the nearby future we're gonna see those kind of the drones in developed armies for sure. A Russian warrior who was just 23 years old went to the war and came back to Russia in a coffin. So he was conscripted on 13th of June and delivered back to Russia on 30th of June. So he was fighting for the long 17 days. It's not yet the record, there were much less terms, like couple of days, 1 day, few hours. So this guy is considered a lucky one. Plus, he has the medal, so he achieved something in his life, right? As Putin said during the meeting with mothers who lost their loved ones in this war, that people are dying because of the alcohol intoxication, so why wouldn't they die for their motherland? Here we have the photo of one more young Russian soldier who also was fighting in Ukraine and who also was delivered to his home in the coffin. Just look at this house. So his mother still lives out there, and the local authorities decided to put this billboard as the notice to his mom that her child is kaputted fighting for Putin. What a perfection paysage of the Russian countryside. Now my friends, please don't forget to press your huge like to this video. By doing so you help me a lot, and as usual I wish you all a peaceful sky wherever you are and have a great time.